Let's continue here as we just enter a new hour, 4 o'clock on the East Coast, as the manhunt enters yet another day for the shooter that killed UnitedHealthcare CEO Brian Thompson on Wednesday. And I do want to put up just this, a live picture right now out of New York City, as we are learning more information, as they are also upping the reward in terms of asking the public for help. Also, new information coming to light. For more on this, let's go on to our Fox 5 team in New York that gets us up to speed with the latest developments.
Adams says authorities are closing in on the suspect behind the December 4th daylight murder of UnitedHealthcare CEO Brian Thompson.
The net is tightening, and we're going to bring this person to justice.
When asked directly if police already knew the name of the shooter, Mayor Adams paused.
We don't want to release that now. If you do, you're basically giving a tip to the person we're seeking, and we do not want to give him an upper hand at all.
On Saturday, police divers were spotted searching a lake in Central Park near Bethesda Fountain. Bloomberg is reporting there was a jacket inside that backpack found in Central Park, not a gun. We still don't know if this backpack was the same one the shooter wore when surveillance cameras recorded him taking aim at the CEO. And in another twist, NBC News is reporting Monopoly money was also found in the backpack. This adds to a growing pile of evidence that includes shell casings carrying the words deny, defend, and depose. But even that is not enough to identify the suspect.
You need, let's say, biometric information because you have very little information from your scene.
Peter Valentin is a professor of forensic science at the University of New Haven.
When you develop DNA information from your potential suspects, you want to compare it to the DNA that you get from the backpack and potentially the expended cartridge cases to establish, are these people in fact involved in your case?
He says investigators are scraping traces of DNA from evidence, first to determine if all the evidence is connected, and then if the DNA can be matched to anyone in existing databases. The FBI has joined the NYPD in this manhunt, issuing a wanted poster and offering a $50,000 reward for information leading to the suspect.
All right, thank you so much for those latest updates. A lot to get into, a lot to unpack in this continuous manhunt. And the New York police also putting out just this image of the person of interest in a taxi, a police, or in a cab there after the shooting took place. All right, let's get into more of this with some of our experts here on Live Now from Fox. Retired New York Police Department Detective Michael Alcazar, and also former and retired police lieutenant in Las Vegas, Randy Sutton. Thank you guys so much for joining us here on Live Now from Fox. Michael, I do want to start with you because we talked about it on Wednesday, the search, the daunting task of looking through all this surveillance camera. In your eyes and what you're hearing in this developing story, what is it looking like and what does this search entail?
Well, they're continually canvassing for more surveillance cameras, for more witnesses. Now it's out to Atlanta. So I'm sure they're canvassing that area also. Like, did he get in another, take another bus? You know, did he get in there, the public, service transportation? So they're also continuing to canvass over there for more, and anybody that might have spotted this guy, any surveillance cameras, unless they already have, like the mayor said, that they already know his name and perhaps they already know his residence. So maybe they're camped out, at these locations where the perpetrator might live, work, his friends are. So they might be staking out everything now. So who knows?
Yeah, that is very good. Randy, let's ask about that because they are keeping some information close to the chest in terms of New York City Mayor Eric Adams. He has a law enforcement background. How close, if they're not to an ID, are they, and how important could that be?
No, I don't know if they actually do have an ID or not. He was being a little cagey about that. But, when we're looking at the evidence and the DNA, many people think that DNA is like the end-all, be-all when it comes down to the investigative leads. But if he's not in any databases, at this point, it won't help identify him. Now, once they find him, they tie him to the DNA that was located at the scene, then that is a great way to get a conviction. But, when it comes down to the identification of the suspect, if they don't have him in a database, and the DNA databases are not all that all-encompassing, they might have to use some type of genetic genealogy in order to try and ascertain his identity.
Yeah, it's very hard. You can see just the fact that he's concealing his face. We do have several images there of him without a mask, but not a ton of information. And we also saw this earlier on today there from New York City in Central Park. You could see divers looking in a potential lake as they have recovered that backpack, the jacket. They also said monopoly money was uncovered inside of this. We're also hearing about some of the casings there and those words that were detailed on them. Michael, when you're looking at this, how sophisticated of a person could this be based on some of this evidence they're uncovering?
Yeah, we're starting to think that maybe he planned all this out, right? He left the shell casings and the live rounds with the words on it. Now he's leaving monopoly money. This guy's like dastardly. He might just be making fun of investigations right now. He's leaving this trail, just to maybe confuse us or again, detract us from finding him. So that was surprising, the monopoly money.
Yeah, and can you get into that, Randy? Because we've seen some heinous crimes, some grisly crimes, but now almost toying with police. What is the motive behind this, and does that tell us about anything about who this person might be?
Well, it's certainly an indication that this was a well-planned murder. When I look at what he did, the words, etching the words on the shell casings, to me was really very telling. When it comes down to, yeah, he intended for those shell casings to be found. He's making a statement. Now, is this statement part of his true motivation when it comes down to a hatred of the insurance industry, or is he using that as a red herring, if you will, to throw investigators off the real motivation, which right now we just don't have. It's all conjecture at this point.
Yeah, that is a very good point. If some of these are misdirections, could that be a possibility, Michael, that some of these are trying to throw police off his trail?
I mean, I don't know, leaving monopoly money in a bag. I don't know how much that would misdirect us. I think he's just, making fun of us at this point.
All right, very good. I want to ask you, because you mentioned the fact that police are saying that there's a Greyhound bus, that he took it to the Big Apple and now potentially going back. How does that change the complexion of this search?
Well, now we have the feds involved, right? And we have Atlanta PD involved, and there might be other agencies involved. Now this is a nationwide manhunt, so it's a little bit more complicated. And again, it's a bigger area to cover, a lot more surveillance videos to retrieve, a lot more witnesses. So made it a little bit more complicated.
Yeah, for sure. And Randy, let's get into that a little bit, the fact that the coordination. How difficult is that? And you also heard Michael talk about how the federal authorities are getting involved in this one now, just crossing the state lines. How beneficial can that be, just opening up the resource pool for this investigation?
Well, one thing the FBI does well, they do forensic examination well. They do coordination pretty well when it comes down to utilizing. They have a ton of resources. Now, this is a manhunt for an individual who has not yet been identified, and there'll be two aspects of this. Once they do identify him, then there'll be even more resources, like the United States Marshal's Office, which will get involved. But right now, the race is on to identify the suspect. That's the critical thing now. I'm really kind of surprised that as much coverage as this news report has gotten, or this story has gotten out with the actual photograph of this individual, I'm a little bit surprised that someone has not recognized him from that photograph from anywhere in the country, because everyone is following this case. There's a huge fascination here.
Yeah, a huge fascination that continues day by day. And Michael, let's get into the fact that we spoke on Wednesday, and I know it was a daunting task, a needle in a haystack search, but you thought we might be a little bit further along than this at this point. As the hours and days stretch on, does it become more difficult?
Yeah, I thought for sure we'd have him arrested by now. It's day 4. Like Randy says, his image is everywhere, so we don't really know if we've identified this guy. I mean, the mayor alluded to it. We might have. We might have his identity. We might be staking him out. He might be holed up somewhere just watching us right now, talking about him. So I am a little bit concerned that here we are, day 4, or nowhere near closer to apprehending him, or so we think. So, time will tell.
Yeah, time will certainly tell. And as it goes on, I want to ask you the same question, Randy, because we're talking about this and they're talking about DNA and forensics and all sorts of things. They kind of canvassed Central Park. If this leads in Georgia don't pan out, where do police go next?
Well, they're going to have to, as this is now a nationwide manhunt, he literally could be anywhere. What they're really searching for is that weapon. That weapon is critical to be found. That's why they're doing the sending the divers into the bodies of water. But even having the divers there, that murky water and the bottom of that is, you could literally be looking at that weapon and not even see it. Yeah. So there has to be a great deal of activity here when it comes down to the searching for that weapon. That is a critical piece of evidence.
All right, very good. That is very interesting to see, because we did watch that camera unfold, and Central Park is so very busy. In terms of what's next for this investigation, Michael, I want to ask you, because we talked about Georgia, we talked about us. Anything else that you're wanting this police investigation to focus on? Anything else that you're looking into that you're curious about?
Well, like I said, I'm sure more tips are coming in. Yep. I'm sure they've established a tip nationwide. I'm curious what information they're receiving from the public. There's no doubt in my mind, with a $60,000 reward, somebody's calling in. I do have a theory. I've seen this before in the past, and maybe Randy has too, because it's like day 4. There could be a possibility that this guy, and I'm going to be crushing with this, that he might have unalived himself. That's why we can't find him. Maybe that's why he's not in public. I've seen this before, where the perpetrator took himself out. So I don't know if anyone's mentioned that. That's also a possibility.
All right, Randy, any comment on that? Is that something that you have seen in the past yourself?
Yeah, that is a possibility. This individual could have taken his own life, and his body is somewhere where he went to hide out, and he could be decomposing right now. But this is a mystery, and the fascination with this is nationwide. So everyone is watching, and law enforcement, they're working their butts off. And the other thing that Michael, we were listening to a little earlier about the tips coming in. They have to look for every tip that comes in. They have to investigate it, and you can guarantee that there are a ton of phone calls coming in, and 99.9% of them are going to be useless, but still have to be investigated. So a massive drain of manpower.
Yeah, an undertaking, unlike maybe something very rare that we haven't seen a ton of as well. And Randy, let's continue on, because of course we're talking about different evidence as well. We're also learning that there were threats before the attack to his family, for Brian Thompson's family. How closely are police investigating in that, and do you think that could lead to somewhere?
Is that for me?
Yeah, I'll say for you, Randy.
Yeah. Oh no, that's critical. That's absolutely critical information. They will be going through all of the devices of the victim to see if there's any evidence that of those threats. They're going to be questioning literally everyone around him, all his coworkers, all his C-suite executives, his family, and try and determine whether or not there was a credible threat. And if there was, even if it could be something as innocuous as a rumor that has to be run down. But yeah, this is, if there were threats made, and remember, this man is a high level executive that in an industry that can anger people. So there could very well have been threats that are not related to this investigation, but they have to be run down.
Yeah, and I want to get into this as well, Michael, because we talked about it on Wednesday, the fact that he did not have security, and that surprised some people. Just his level, his position, his standing at UnitedHealthcare to not have security in New York City. In terms of the threats, though, can that help police lead them to a motive if they are IDing a suspect, although not revealing it to the public?
Oh, for sure. If there are any threats, any credible threats in the past, in its history, any correspondence with the organization, they will investigate that, right? If this is in fact a personal vendetta, and this guy wrote those words on those bullets, those words might appear in some kind of a correspondence. Again, the frustration, I'm sure, is long. It's not like something that just happened overnight. There's going to be some kind of history. So yeah, that's going to be very important and key to identifying this suspect.
Yeah, very good. All right, you guys, very invaluable resources. Michael, Randy, any parting words from either of you guys about this as we enter a fifth day, as we enter almost a new week, this manhunt continues?
Well, I'll tell you one thing I would not be surprised about, and that would be him contacting, or in some methodology, taunting law enforcement if he's still out there, because he's watching this very, very closely, and he's become somewhat of a folk figure, and I wouldn't doubt that a manifesto or some type of communication comes from him.
Michael, any response to that one?
Yeah, I agree with Randy. This guy's become like a homicidal Robin Hood, but I urge the public, if you have any information, if you know this perpetrator, please call the police, call the Crime Stoppers line. This is a person that was guilty of committing a horrible homicide that affected his family, and he should be brought to justice.
All right, very good. Thank you guys for joining us. The search continues. The manhunt continues for this very elusive person of interest there in New York City. Thank you both for joining us here and speaking on Live Now from Fox this Sunday.
Thank you.
Oh, pleasure.
All right, thank you so much. All right, let's continue on. Great conversation with two very respected individuals there in that law enforcement field, detailing the search as it continues on. A picture of some of these Crime Stoppers images of this person of interest in the fatal shooting of Brian Thompson, the UnitedHealthcare CEO, in Midtown Manhattan early Wednesday morning at 6:46 a.m. The search continues as they are uncovering a jacket, a backpack they believe belonged to this individual, also Monopoly money inside of it. We're also learning more information about threats to the Brian Thompson and his family, the UnitedHealthcare CEO, and also a potential lead that leads investigators to Georgia, as this suspect, this person of interest, might have fled the city on a Greyhound bus heading for Georgia, heading back to Georgia, as they believe he potentially came to New York City via that same transportation. All right, I'm Andy Mack here on Live Now from Fox. We're detailing the latest with all of this investigation. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back in here to Live Now from Fox. I am Andy Mack. Let's get back into the transportation of this person of interest in the fatal shooting of UnitedHealthcare CEO Brian Thompson. It enters, this manhunt does, a fifth day in New York City as police recover a jacket, a backpack, and also Monopoly money in Central Park. But let's take you now down to Georgia as our Fox 5 team, Deidre Dukes, details what they know from that location.
The state manhunt for the murder suspect who gunned down UnitedHealthcare CEO Brian Thompson in Manhattan now runs through Atlanta.
It just kind of hits home when they say that it could have possibly boarded from Atlanta.
Just the thought that there's, that it's around you.
In a new timeline of events, police have connected the suspected killer to an Atlanta Greyhound bus station. NYPD sources tell Fox News the shooter took a Greyhound bus from Atlanta to New York City days before Thanksgiving.
It's just wild to me. It's crazy. So, you never know who you're next to these days.
A stunning development for area residents and bus passengers traveling through the Greyhound bus terminal in Atlanta Friday.
For him to get on the bus with all these people and to go up there and shoot this man down like this. What you think about? I just think like this world is coming to an end.
Take a good look at these images. Police released unmasked photos of a person of interest seen checking into an Upper West Side hostel. Authorities say he was in New York City for at least 10 days and spotted at various locations before the shooting. Testing is underway after investigators found DNA on a burner phone the suspect dropped in an alleyway. and a water bottle he bought at a nearby Starbucks before the shooting. They are also using facial recognition technology in an effort to identify the suspect. News of the Atlanta tie to the case broke Thursday night. A Greyhound spokesperson told Fox Digital the company is fully cooperating with authorities on this active investigation.
All right, Deidre Dukes, there some new information coming to light in this search for the suspect. Also, New York City Police, New York City Mayor Eric Adams not disclosing if they do have an ID as of yet or not. So that could be a big point of this investigation, not wanting to tip off this individual if they do know who he or she is. And of course, we're also learning information about some of these elusive, sophisticated tactics this person might be using, notably the fake ID used at a hostel in New York City where he was staying, and also the monopoly money, the curious case there in New York. This was the scene from earlier on today as police scouring different parts of the city, including lakes, ponds in the Big Apple, in that Central Park area. So you can see police doing everything they can with the resources they have. And if this is continuing to come to light about Georgia, the federal authorities going to be involved. That will unlock some new resources for this investigation as well. All right, I'm Andy Mack here on Live Now from Fox. Let's slide away for a quick 2-minute break. We'll get to more top headlines around the world after this. All right, welcome back in here to Live Now from Fox. I'm Andy Mack. Thank you so much for joining us. Let's turn our attention to more complications in the Middle East as the Assad regime falls. A very monumental moment there in terms of that region, but it also complicates some things as we're learning here on Live Now from Fox. Let's take you out to some comments from President Biden earlier on today discussing the latest with that story.
Good afternoon. What happened in the Middle East? After 13 years of civil war in Syria, more than half a century of brutal authoritarian rule by Bashar al-Assad and his father before him, rebel forces have forced Assad to resign his office and flee the country. We're not sure where he is, but there's word that he's in Moscow. At long last, the Assad regime has fallen. This regime brutalized and tortured and killed literally hundreds of thousands of innocent Syrians. The fall of the regime is a fundamental act of justice. It's a moment of historic opportunity for the long-suffering people of Syria to build a better future for their proud country. It's also a moment of risk and uncertainty. As we all turn to the question of what comes next, the United States will work with our partners and the stakeholders in Syria to help them seize an opportunity to manage the risks. You know, for years, the main backers of Assad have been Iran, Hezbollah, and Russia. But over the last week, their support collapsed, all three of them, because all three of them are far weaker today than they were when I took office. And let's remember why. After Hamas attacked Israel on October the 7th, 2023, when much of the world responded with horror, Iran and its proxies chose to launch a multi-front war against Israel. That was a historic mistake on Iran's part. Today, Iran's main territorial proxy, Hezbollah, is also on its back. Only 12 days ago, I spoke from the Rose Garden about the ceasefire deal in Lebanon. A deal that was only possible because Hezbollah has been badly degraded. Meanwhile, Hamas has been badly degraded as well. Iran's own military capabilities have been weakened. Iran tried 2 times to attack Israel, and the United States and built a coalition of countries to directly defend Israel and help defeat those attacks. All this made possible for Iran and Hezbollah to continue to prop up, impossible, I should say, for them to prop up the Assad regime. Additionally, Russia's support for Assad also failed. And that's because Ukraine, backed by our American allies, has put up a wall of resistance against the invading Russian forces, inflicting massive damage on the Russian forces. And that has left Russia unable to protect its main ally in the Middle East. Excuse my cold. The upshot for all this is, for the first time ever, neither Russia nor Iran nor Hezbollah could defend this abhorrent regime in Syria. And this is a direct result of the blows that Ukraine, Israel have delivered upon their own self-defense with unflagging support of the United States. You know, over the past 4 years, my administration pursued a clear and principled policy towards Syria. First, we made clear from the start sanction on al-Assad would remain in place unless he engaged seriously in a political process to end the civil war, as outlined by the UN Security Council resolution passed in 2015. But Assad refused, so we carried out a comprehensive sanction program against him and all those responsible for atrocities against the Syrian people. Second, we maintained our military presence in Syria, our counter-ISIS, to counter the support of local partners as well on the ground, their partners, never ceding an inch of territory, taking out leaders of ISIS, ensuring that ISIS can never establish a safe haven there again. Third, we've supported Israel's freedom of action against Iranian networks in Syria and against actors aligned with Iran who transported lethal aid to Lebanon. And when necessary, ordered the use of military force against Iranian networks to protect U.S. forces. Our approach has shifted the balance of power in the Middle East.
All right, just listening in there to some remarks from President Biden on the latest developments in Syria. And we want to continue on because we're also learning, like you heard there from President Biden talk about this, saying U.S. CENTCOM forces conducted dozens of precision airstrikes targeting known ISIS camps and operatives in Syria on today, December the 8th. We're going to be joined right now on the ground outside of the White House by Fox News' Lucas Tomlinson. Lucas, thank you so much for joining us here on Live Now from Fox. A very monumental day in the Middle East. What are we hearing from Biden? What are we hearing more from Washington, D.C.?
Well, it's an historic day, Andy. Great to join you. And that's why President Biden came out to address the American public this afternoon. He spoke for about 8 minutes. He said this is an historic opportunity for Syria now that the Assad regime has fallen. But Biden also cautioned about the risk of uncertainty in the future because a U.S. designated terrorist group is the one who led the charge on Damascus, a terrorist group known by its initials HTS. And already we're seeing fighting in other parts of Syria between Turkish-backed forces and American-backed Kurdish fighters. In fact, the Turks launched a new round of airstrikes today. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin calling his Turkish counterpart, something to watch there. And you mentioned the U.S. Central Command, those airstrikes. It was a massive one today. 75 ISIS targets in all. B-52 bombers launched, F-15 strike aircraft, A-10 attack aircraft. Over 140 bombs dropped on ISIS. You know, previously you had Russian fighter jets and Assad regime jets flying over central Syria. Now, with Assad out of the picture, it appears the U.S. military wanted to take advantage and led these airstrikes west of the Euphrates River, where some 900 U.S. troops are based right now today in the eastern part of the country. So these ISIS forces, we heard from President Biden in his remarks to the country saying he wants to make sure ISIS remains defeated. Yes, Andy.
Yeah, that is so very true. Good point. And of course, they're saying in a statement saying we will not allow ISIS to reconstitute. And there are so many different factors. ISIS, Al-Qaeda in the region. How much are they paying attention to this region and kind of figuring out what's to go? Because many people pointing to potential civil war in that country moving forward.
There's no question. Remember, for decades, the Iranians have been supporting and propping up the Assad regime. We saw starting in 2015, in the middle of the Syrian civil war, Russian President Vladimir Putin deploying fighter jets and warships to Syria. In fact, the Russians still have those two bases, and it was from that base that the Russians, according to state media, took Assad out of the country. He is now in Moscow, where he's been granted asylum. But you're right, there's a bit of an alphabet soup of different groups in Syria, and certain groups are going to be taking taking advantage. Certainly, the U.S. military wants to make sure ISIS doesn't reconstitute. Recall, there's tens of thousands of ISIS fighters in a prison camp in eastern Syria. That's why those 900 troops are there, and that's why U.S. jets are orbiting overhead. But now you have Turkey wanting to, of course, this is all, much of Syria. Syria wasn't even a country until after World War I, Andy. The French helped put it together, and this is former Ottoman Empire area land. So the Turks want a piece of Syria, and that's where it's going to be interesting, possibly NATO on NATO violence, at least through proxy.
All right, very good, very interesting. One question I have before I let you go, and of course, as we saw Biden leave the room, there were questions about Austin Tice, an American journalist that was disappeared 12 years ago near the Syrian capital. Are we hearing any more information about Tice and any operation to try to bring him home if they know a location or even if he's alive?
Well, great point, Andy. We did hear from President Biden. He was asked by a reporter about Austin Tice. He's a Georgetown graduate, an American freelance journalist, and a former Marine Corps veteran who's been missing since 2012 while he was covering the Syrian civil war. His family actually came to the White House late this week to speak to Biden. They say they have a source that says Tice is alive. President Biden, when he spoke to people, says he wants to get Tice home. Certainly, with the fall of the Assad regime, this is a possibility that has grown just in the past 24 hours. So a lot of people are hoping to get good news about Austin Tice. Many people in Washington, certainly, and throughout the country, of course, want to see him returned.
Yeah, very good. Thank you, Lucas. I appreciate your time, as always. Great breaking it all down on a very monumental day in that region. Thanks again. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Andy.
All right, thank you so much. All right, let's continue on here on Live Now from Fox. Great conversation, a live look outside of this on this Sunday, just approaching 5 o'clock on the East Coast. And I do want to put up just this post from the Washington Times saying Biden believes the U.S. believes Austin Tice, the journalist, is alive after disappearing in Syria in 2012. So plenty to get to in terms of this. Also, as we're learning that ousted Syrian leader Assad fled to Moscow, received asylum from his longtime ally, the Russian media said on Sunday. All right, let's continue discussing the latest with this new development here. Their regime falling in Syria, the Assad regime falling a very big day. And I do want to talk more about this. You can see from Trey Yink saying former Syrian President Assad and his family now in Russia, according to state media. We do want to bring in right now senior research fellow at the FDD, David Daoud. Thank you so much for joining us here on Live Now from Fox to detail the latest. This is a big day, and that might be an understatement. What are you hearing? What's the latest in your eyes?
Thank you for having me on. It's a monumental day. I mean, the Assad regime has been in power for 50 years. They withstood the efforts of Syrian revolutionaries to depose them over the course of a brutal civil war. Of course, it was with the assistance of Russia and Iran and its proxies, and those have been severely degraded, as President Biden said. And I think that's what really led to this moment being able to happen. A lot of Syrians, I'm sure, are ecstatic over what's happening, and some have more hesitancy because of the identity of the people who've finally deposed Assad. HTS is a terrorist organization, after all, so it's on our FTO list.
Yeah, that is so very true. And of course, you're seeing some of these scenes, celebrations in the streets in Damascus and beyond after Assad was overthrown, the regime overthrown, fleeing to Russia. Let's get into that a little bit, talking about his relationship with Russia and what it means. Are we surprised that he went to Russia, and how does that change things?
Absolutely not. The Assad regime, even his father, Bashar, Syria has historically been a client state of the Russians. This is why the Russians intervened in 2015. They have interests that the Assad regime, interest in the Middle East, the Assad regime has been securing, namely the port in Tartus and this airbase they have in Khmeimim. This is their ability, the footing for them to project power in the Middle East. So as a 24-year client himself, since he took power after his father passed away, and a 50-year client overall, if not longer, with the Syria itself, they owed it to him in some ways. So it was natural. I mean, that was one of the natural locations that he would have gone. The other would have been Iran or the UAE, which has occasionally served as a kind of a waiting place for deposed dictators.
All right, very good. I do want to ask you about maybe Russia's relationship now moving forward with Syria. How much does that change, and what could this mean for that region as a whole?
I think the Russians are pragmatists. There were reports earlier today that the Syrian regime's flag was taken down from the Syrian embassy in Moscow, which I think is telling. I think they're, they have their interests in Syria, and they'll try to at least work with whomever's in power to secure those interests. The same thing with the Iranians. As much as the Iranians have inflicted damage upon Syria, their troops were on the ground, their proxies were really on the ground, fighting the war on behalf of Assad, murdering hundreds of thousands of Syrians. Now they're trying to pretend that nothing happened. Their officials have said they're willing to work with the democratic process in Syria. And there have even been reports that they're sending out feelers to HTS, which, it's a demonstration of their pragmatism.
All right, interesting to say the least. I do want to get into another point that we were talking about with President Biden coming out and making remarks, also talking about how U.S. forces conducted dozens of precision airstrikes. A post here from CENTCOM talking about this, targeting known ISIS camps and operatives in central Syria, talking about these operations to ensure that ISIS does not seek to take advantage of this current situation. How big in reality is a concern of that for Biden and the United States?
This has been a major concern for us for a while. That's why we have about 1,000 troops positioned in Syria in order to secure these prisoners in Al-Hol and elsewhere, and to prevent the resurgence of ISIS in Syria. I think it's not just us that's concerned. The Israelis are concerned. Now that the regime has fallen, it's not just a matter of the organization itself rising, but perhaps getting its hands on now no longer secured weapons depots, chemical weapons facilities. We know the Israelis have been conducting a blitz of strikes against targets in Syria to prevent these weapons from falling into enemy hands. They've even pushed deeper into the demilitarized zone on the border with the Golan Heights for the first time in 50 years, again, as a demonstration of their concern. I'd imagine we in the United States are equally concerned about not just the resurgence of bad actors, but again, them getting their hands on weapons that would be game-changing weapons.
Yeah, watching and waiting to see what unfolds from the United States perspective. And this feels like it continues to splinter, but something that we've seen in Syria, it's splintering before. What's the likelihood of more unrest, a civil war, a power struggle in that country?
It's hard to say, right? I think right now there's the euphoria of deposing a brutal dictator, and our hearts have to go out to the Syrian people for that. But as we've often seen in different places where these types of revolutions happen, there's always the risk of things devolving. Right, the Syrian opposition is not a united entity. It is made up of competing factions, sometimes with competing ideologies. How they decide to apportion power could affect how things shake out. Again, these are also Islamist factions. They're al-Qaeda affiliates that have only taken a tactical distancing from al-Qaeda. If they intend to impose Islamic law on the locals, who are not necessarily they're traditional people perhaps, but perhaps they don't want to live under the strict rigors of Islamic law, that could lead to friction between the public and their newfound potential rulers. We hope for Syria that they didn't just replace one dictator with new tyrant. We hope it's a better day for them.
Yeah, that is so very true, because you just never know what's going on. And it feels like we've been in this position before in terms of Syria, although it's been maybe the better part of a decade. I do want to talk about Israel and how they factor into all of this, because Trey Ying's putting this out saying the implications of the Assad regime collapse for Israel are huge. The war that you watched unfold over the past year with Hezbollah was made possible in part to Iranian weapons smuggling through Syria by the ground, by air. We spent years tracking these weapons shipments. In terms of Israel and how they are factored into this, if they are a beneficiary of this, what do you make of it?
I think it's in some ways a double-edged sword for the Israelis, and that seems to be how the Israelis are looking at it. There was a statement yesterday from an unnamed senior political official in Israel saying that Assad's our enemy, but his enemies are also our enemy, meaning these militant groups are also our enemy. So the best solution for us is to sit back and watch them deal with each other. And I think that remains the Israeli position. At the same time, what this event does, Syria had served as the vital link between Iran and its central proxy, Hezbollah, for decades. And we need to understand that Hezbollah is the tip of the spear of Iranian regional expansionism. Wherever Iran goes, Hezbollah is there first, laying the groundwork first. This has become the major threat that Iran poses on Israel's borders. So after Israel has spent a year, and then the past 2 months particularly, decimating Hezbollah, again, not past the point of regeneration, but severely inflicting blows on them. And then Hezbollah's lifeline to the east is cut. This puts Hezbollah and the entire Iranian regional project in jeopardy. Wow. But there's also the threat, again, HTS, their affiliates are terrorist groups, they're Sunni jihadist groups. They have no love lost on the Israelis. So the Israelis could be replacing one enemy with the next. And I think that's the fear in Israel.
All right, and my last question before I let you go, because the end-all, be-all, it always comes back to Iran in some form or fashion. How are they viewing this, and what are we watching, what are we hearing from them?
Well, their proxies just withdrew and crumpled. What we saw, though, from Fars News is they're shifting the blame to Assad. And they're saying that, it's not our fault. The resistance did what it was supposed to do. It was the Syrian army that melted away, and Assad became weak because he was listening to the advice of the West, which, again, this is a predictable narrative. At the same time, the Iranians are master pragmatists. They have their interests in Syria. Again, the connection to Hezbollah is just one of them. They're not above working with Sunni jihadist groups. Again, their relationship with Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad are perfect examples. They also had a historical relationship with al-Qaeda. Now, the question is, will the sectarian blood that's been spilled between Sunni and Shia be so bad to prevent Iran from pragmatically exploiting a relationship with Syria's newfound rulers, assuming HTS remains in power or fully assumes power. But I think the Iranians are trying to find a way back into Syria because of its vital importance to their regional project.
All right, very good, David Daoud. Thank you so much for joining us. Any other parting words, any other things that you are focusing on before I let you go?
Well, the big issue is Hezbollah in Lebanon. And I think, again, this is a big step towards weakening Hezbollah, assuming all the pieces fall into place. But what we know is that Hezbollah and its masters in Iran are very adaptable. They're very pragmatic. And in time, they could find a way that circumvents the need for Syria to resupply Hezbollah, to rearm Hezbollah. And then the region ends up, once again, one Iranian domino down, but the others may still survive. Iran will be able to continue projecting power into the region. So keep eyes on Lebanon, keep eyes on Hezbollah's fate in Lebanon.
All right, very good. The Jenga tower, and we'll see how much it takes to crumble, but another piece in this big puzzle. David, thank you again. I appreciate your time as always here on Live Now.
Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. All right, let's continue on. Great conversation as always. Very complicated region to say the least, but also a very monumental day in the Middle East, in Syria, as the Assad regime falls after those 50 years of repression. All right, a live look right now in Washington, D.C. at the White House on this Sunday, approaching just 5 o'clock on the East Coast. And we're also expecting a reception in the East Room, the Kennedy Center Honors Celebration. We'll have that coming up in just a little bit. You can see the presidential seal. No Biden at this event as of yet. People still taking their seats. Let's slide away for a quick 2-minute break. We'll get out to more top headlines after. All right, welcome back into Live and Now from Fox. You can see a Kennedy Senator's reception there in the East Room in Washington, D.C. Let's take you back out, though, and listen to the full comments from President Biden talking about the developments in Syria. Let's listen into what he had to say from earlier.
Good afternoon. A lot happening in the Middle East. After 13 years of civil war in Syria, more than half a century of brutal authoritarian rule by Bashar Assad and his father before him, rebel forces have forced Assad to resign his office and flee the country. We're not sure where he is, but there's word that he's in Moscow. At long last, the Assad regime has fallen. This regime brutalized and tortured and killed literally hundreds of thousands of innocent Syrians. The fall of the regime is a fundamental act of justice. It's a moment of historic opportunity for the long-suffering people of Syria to build a better future for their proud country. It's also a moment of risk and uncertainty. As we all turn to the question of what comes next, the United States will work with our partners and the stakeholders in Syria to help them seize an opportunity to manage the risks. You know, for years, the main backers of Assad have been Iran, Hezbollah, and Russia. But over the last week, their support collapsed, all three of them, because all three of them are far weaker today than they were when I took office. And let's remember why. After Hamas attacked Israel on October the 7th, 2023, when much of the world responded with horror, Iran and its proxies chose to launch a multi-front war against Israel. That was a historic mistake on Iran's part. Today, Iran's main territorial proxy, Hezbollah, is also on its back. Only 12 days ago, I spoke from the Rose Garden about the ceasefire deal in Lebanon, a deal that was only possible because Hezbollah has been badly degraded. Meanwhile, Hamas has been badly degraded as well. Iran's own military capabilities have been weakened. Iran tried 2 times to attack Israel, and the United States and built a coalition of countries to directly defend Israel and help defeat those attacks. All this made possible for Iran and Hezbollah to continue to prop up, impossible, I should say, for them to prop up the Assad regime. Additionally, Russia's support for Assad also failed. And that's because Ukraine, backed by our American allies, has put up a wall of resistance against the invading Russian forces, inflicting massive damage on the Russian forces. And that has left Russia unable to protect its main ally in the Middle East. Excuse my cold. The upshot for all this is, for the first time ever, neither Russia, nor Iran, nor Hezbollah could defend this abhorrent regime in Syria. And this is a direct result of the blows that Ukraine, Israel, have delivered upon their own self-defense with unflagging support of the United States. You know, over the past 4 years, my administration pursued a clear and principled policy towards Syria. First, we made clear from the start sanctions on Assad would remain in place unless he engaged seriously in a political process to end the civil war, as outlined by the UN Security Council resolution passed in 2015. But Assad refused, so we carried out a comprehensive sanction program against him and all those responsible for atrocities against the Syrian people. Second, we maintained our military presence in Syria, our counter-ISIS, to counter the support of local partners as well on the ground, their partners, never ceding an inch of territory, taking out leaders of ISIS, ensuring that ISIS can never establish a safe haven there again. Third, we've supported Israel's freedom of action against Iranian networks in Syria and against actors aligned with Iran who transported lethal aid to Lebanon. And when necessary, ordered the use of military force against Iranian networks to protect U.S. forces. Our approach has shifted the balance of power in the Middle East. Through this combination of support for our partners, sanctions, diplomacy, and targeted military force when necessary, we now see new opportunities opening up for the people of Syria and for the entire region. Looking ahead, the United States will do the following. First, we'll support Syria's neighbors, including Jordan, Lebanon, Iraq, and Israel, should any threat arise from Syria during this period of transition. I will speak with leaders of the region in the coming days. I had long discussions with all of our people earlier this morning. And I'll send senior officials from my administration to the region as well. Second, we will help ensure stability in eastern Syria, protecting any personnel, our personnel, against any threats, and will remain our mission against ISIS will be maintained, including the security of detention facilities where ISIS fighters are being held as prisoners. We're clear-eyed about the fact that ISIS will try to take advantage of any vacuum to reestablish its capabilities and to create a safe haven. We will not let that happen. In fact, just today, U.S. forces conducted a dozen of precision strikes airstrikes within Syria, targeting ISIS camps and ISIS operatives. Third, we will engage with all Syrian groups, including within the process led by the United Nations, to establish a transition away from the Assad regime toward independent, sovereign, I want to say it again, sovereign Syria, with a new constitution, a new government that serves all Syrians. And this process will be determined by the Syrian people themselves. And the United States will do whatever we can to support them, including through humanitarian relief, to help restore Syria after more than a decade of war and generations of brutality by the Assad family. And finally, we will remain vigilant. Make no mistake, some of the rebel groups that took down Assad have their own grim record of terrorism and human rights abuses. We've taken note of statements by the leaders of these rebel groups in recent days, and they're saying the right things now. But as they take on greater responsibility, we will assess not just their words, but their actions. And we are mindful that there are Americans in Syria, including those who reside there, as well as Austin Tice, who was taken captive more than 12 years ago. We remain committed to returning him to his family. As I've said, this is a moment of considerable risk and uncertainty, but I also believe this is the best opportunity in generations for Syrians to forge their own future, free of opposition. It's also an opportunity though it's far from certain, for a more secure and prosperous Middle East, where our friends are safe, where enemies are contained. And it would be a waste of this historic opportunity if one tyrant were toppled and only to see a new one rise up in its place. So it's now incumbent upon all the opposition groups to seek a role in governing Syria, to demonstrate their commitment to the rights of all Syrians, the rule of law, and the protection of religious and ethnic minorities. These past few days have been historic. And it's in the days ahead that will determine the future of this country. And we intend to approach them with strength, wisdom, and resolve. So thank you very much. God bless America, and God protect our troops. Thank you.
What should happen to Assad now?
Those were the remarks there from President Biden on the latest developments there in Syria. Obviously, history in the making this weekend in Syria. I'm your host, Mike Page. Thanks again for joining us on Live Now from Fox. We appreciate you joining us here on the Sunday edition, bringing the top stories, live feeds, and, of course, breaking news as it happens. We are going to take our first break of the hour. When we come back, we'll take you out live to the White House, where the Kennedy honors are happening, and we'll be bringing that to you from the beginning right here on Live Now from Fox. Back, everyone, here to Live Now from Fox. I'm your host, Mike Page. Always great to be with you as we continue to bring you the world of top feeds and live ones as well. We are going to go out to the White House right now. President Biden hosting the Kennedy Center honors. Let's listen in on Live Now.
Stand up, let everybody know who you are. The board chairman, one of the most generous men I've ever known on everything is in need. A friend of mine, David Rubenstein. David, stand up. When I was getting set up in the president's suite upstairs where we sleep, my brother was saying, look, you want to be able to see from your desk. You want to be able to see Rubenstein. I said, I beg your pardon? He said, the Washington Memorial. This guy rebuilt the sucker. I'm serious. God love you. You're the best, David. You are. And thanks to all of you, especially this year's Kennedy Center honorees. Folks, for Jill and me, and Jill is not here. She'll may make it over to the event tonight. But Jill has been dealing with women's equality for women's health research. And she just got back from Abu Dhabi and all through Africa. And ended up, although she did go spend a little time in Sicily, because just a day or so to meet her great-great-grandmother's parents. she made fun of me going back on the Irish, you know? Pat, but I tell you what, I don't screw around. When she gets her Irish, when she gets her Italian up, I don't mess with her. But anyway, you'll all see her tonight. She's up changing. Just her plane landed, I don't know, about an hour and a half ago, 2 hours ago. For Jill and me, for Kamala and Doug, this is one of the favorite events of the White House. I mean that sincerely. And I did it when I was vice president, did it when I was a senator, as I could. All around us, we see the power of art and imagination. Excuse me for my voice. To capture the spirit of this holiday season, to capture faith, you know, which is the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things not seen. Folks, we see the power of the arts everywhere, everywhere. A few days ago, I returned from a trip to Angola in southwestern Africa. Historians believe people in Angola account for a significant number of all enslaved people shipped to the United States. I'm the first president to ever visit there. Today, millions of African Americans have Angolan ancestry. I spoke at their National Slavery Museum, where over 100 years ago, enslaved Angolans were baptized into a faith that was foreign to them. Their names were changed against their will. They were condemned to a slave ship bound for what was referred to as the Middle Passage. I saw the artifacts, the shackles, the whips that tortured their bodies. I also saw something else. I saw folk instruments Angolans used to share the strength and hope and persevere. Instruments like those that they would take all the way across the Atlantic to help them lay the foundation for black folk music in America. It's really remarkable how much music has played a role in everything. Throughout our nation's history, artists in America have used their talents to inspire and empower, to overcome, to challenge power freely and without fear, and to be a link in memory between the past and the future. It matters. To be the spark to make history and to ensure history is never erased. We have too many people trying to erase history instead of rewrite history. That power of art is everywhere. And in America, our freedom of expression sets us apart. Other nations were founded on ethnicity, religion, geography. We're the only nation in the world, major nation, founded on an idea. An idea, literally an idea. That idea was we're all created equal and deserve to be treated equally throughout our lives. We've never fully lived up to that idea, but we've never walked away from it either. In America, artists have made sure we never will. And that's what we celebrate tonight. Raised in Queens, New York, the grandson of Italian immigrants, Francis Ford Coppola was once a 9-year-old boy homebound with polio. But with a tape recorder and a camera by his side, his imagination took seed. Over 6 decades, he would write, direct, and produce over 70 films, both sweeping epics and deeply personal stories, taking big swings to explore who we are as a nation and who we are as human beings. Patton, The Godfather, Apocalypse Now, Dracula, 5 Oscars, 14 nominations. Mentioning fellow filmmakers and partnering with his good friend George Lucas to pioneer innovations in filmmaking. Fostering talent before they were stars, like previous Kennedy Center honorees who are here tonight. Robert De Niro. Robert, stand up. I'm a big fan, man. I want everybody to see you. If I get in trouble, I'm coming to you, pal. Well, Francis, I'm looking for work in February. So maybe you've got something for me and a Biden-De Niro combination here. I can't sing, I can't act, I can't dance to a damn thing, but I can help you. Above all, Francis is about family. He's joined us tonight by his children and grandchildren who are making their own mark in American cinema. For a storied career of independence, vision, I say congratulations, Francis, and thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you for all you've done. Formed in the San Francisco Bay at an inflection point in history, the Grateful Dead have long since transcended 1960 counterculture. Technical virtuosos fiercely dedicated to their craft, they've fused decades and dozens of musical styles to create a willowy new American sound. Experimental, innovative, and brave. Their lyrics tell the story of dreamers and rebels, or iconic jams, or just a performance. They're not just that, but they're an ongoing conversation with generations of devoted fans. Hundreds and hundreds of songs. Recorded 59 of top 40 albums. 59. 2,300 concerts from Woodstock to Egypt's Great Pyramids. One of the most popular bands ever to be watched live in concert. Look, there's still a lot of deadheads around. No two performances even the same, but their spirit and joy is enduring. Tonight, we honor Bobby, Bill, and Mickey. Guys, where you at? And we remember those lost songs along the way, like Ron. Phil, whose grandson Graham is here tonight. And, of course, Jerry Garcia, whose daughter Trixie is here. Trixie, where are you? Stand up. Ladies and gentlemen, the Grateful Dead. My youngest granddaughter said, "Pop, what's the Dead?" I said, "I beg your pardon? What's the Grateful Dead, Pop?" Anyway, joining them here tonight is another California native. Bonnie Raitt, born and raised in Burbank, the daughter of a famed Broadway singer, accomplished piano player with two musical brothers. 8-year-old Bonnie got her first guitar as a Christmas gift. The rest is history. Thank you, Santa. Thank you, Santa. Over the last 50 years, she's only 50 now, 13 Grammy Awards, 31 nominations, more Grammy performances than any woman in American history. An inductee to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Her music defies genre and blends music of folk, country, rock, and pop. You know, with infectious beats and soulful lyrics, her sound carries through the highs and the lows of life. Time and trust, heartbreak and hope, love and loss. That's Bonnie, helping us find healing and light and purpose within and beyond music. One of the all-time greats that inspires fans and follows musicians alike. And I tell you, Bonnie, you've had an incredible impact. So, Bonnie, thank you for all you've done, not just your music kid. When Bonnie picked up that guitar at 8 years old in California, there was a young boy more than 2,000 miles away in Cuba, born to a mechanic and a homemaker, raised in a home with a dirt floor. Arturo Sandoval was 10 years old when he picked up the trumpet. Under a comics museum that controlled everything, from where people could travel to what they could read, his musical talent was undeniable and uncontrollable. While jazz was thriving in the United States, he spent 3 months in jail. 3 months in jail for listening to American legends on the radio. At great risk to he and his family, they fled Cuba for America, to live in the land of the free and share his own jazz sounds for the entire world. 33 albums, 10 Grammys and an Emmy and the Medal of Freedom. Arturo's story is the American story, a nation of immigrants, a nation of dreamers, a nation of freedom. Congratulations, Arturo. God love you. Few places in America capture the essence of freedom more than the Apollo Theater. You know, you walk through those doors on 125th Street in Harlem, New York. You walk into American history. Literally walk into American history, opened in the 30s as a refuge for black patrons and performers in a segregated America. Over the next 90 years, it became the birthplace of black expression. Home for the hopeful, school for stars in music, dance, comedy, acting, and so much more, including former Kennedy Center honorees Ella Fitzgerald, James Brown, Gladys Knight, Stevie Wonder. The list goes on. You know, when there were few places to go, there was Showtime at the Apollo. Showtime at the Apollo. A big stage, a boisterous crowd, a beacon of what's possible, shaping a fearless future of equality and inclusion in the nation. You know, one where black excellence is celebrated, not denied, reminding us all that black history is American history, for God's sake. Black culture is American culture. For the first time, the Kennedy Center is bestowing this honor to an institution and not an individual. Thank you, Apollo Theater. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Let me close with this. It's been the honor of my life to serve as your president. And for the final time, Jill and I are honored to represent the presidency, to recognize and respect the power of the arts to literally redeem the soul of the nation. Because that's what he's done so many times, redeem the soul of the nation. So congratulations to our honorees, to your families. Look forward to tonight's shows. God bless you all, and may God protect our troops. Thank you, thank you.
All right, President Biden hosting the White House part of the 47th Annual Kennedy Center Honors, and the full program will be happening in a couple of hours in D.C., and it'll be broadcast on PBS a little bit later this month. Hi, everyone. Mike Page here. Thanks again for joining us so much on Live Now. We are going to take a 2-minute break, and when we come back, we'll be talking about Bitcoin hitting that all-important 100,000 marker. Where will it go next? We'll be breaking it down all for you coming up here next on Live Now. Welcome back, everyone, here to Live Now from Fox. Sunday edition continues to carry on. Always great to be with you on this Sunday, bringing you the top stories, the live feeds, and, of course, breaking news as it happens. All right, next up, we want to talk about digital currency. Bitcoin has been in the news as of late, hitting that $100,000 marker there, and it continues to make its way. Now, where will it go next? We want to break it all down here for you. Let's bring in crypto expert Brian Chesney. Thanks so much, Brian, for joining us here on Live Now from Fox. And I think a lot of people, Brian, when they see the 100,000 marker there, they say, okay, I thought it was overvalued at 50, 60, 70, 80. Now it's at 100 there. Where is this going?
Yeah. So if you think the price of Bitcoin is too high, it isn't. Look, the biggest regret investors are going to have when Bitcoin's market cap is 5 times bigger than it is now, that they don't have enough units of Bitcoin. See, over the last 6.5 years, we've been a registered investment advisor specifically focused on crypto. And we are seeing more and more clients want to talk about Bitcoin in terms of how many units they have, that they maybe want to have 10, or maybe they want to have 1 for each one of their children. What's important to note here is that you can start small. You can start with just a quarter unit of Bitcoin. Start with something, make a plan. It's an asset that everybody should have at least a little bit of.
Yeah, it's remarkable seeing this surge here and just seeing it continue to rise. Now, of course, 100,000 was a big milestone there. Where is the next thresholds going to take this, and what are people eyeing right now for the currency?
Yeah, there's a lot of people, Twitter, Instagram, you'll see in social media talking about 250,000. You have MicroStrategy and Michael Saylor saying in the millions. Really here, what you want to look at is, should I have some of this as a diversifier in my portfolio? And if the answer is yes, then you want to be a long-term holder. Because over the 15 years of Bitcoin's history, yes, there's been some bumps in the road, but it continues to go higher, and it's been one of the best performing asset classes out there. So we do think much higher from here.
And Brian, will we see companies and their 401ks offering this up eventually to employees, so they not only could, invest in the regular, stocks or portfolios, but have digital assets as well? When is that going to happen, do you think?
Well, it's actually already started to happen. Our company, as a 338 advisor, actually has plans out there with companies where the employees can have a small percentage of Bitcoin in their portfolios. Now, mass adoption is going to be further down the road, but it's definitely coming. And when it does, that's that next big group of buyers that helps push prices up. But it also just really helps bring up their personal portfolios and gives them something better performing than traditional 401ks, which a lot of people tend to find underperform and are not that exciting. So adding Bitcoin could make it not only exciting, but something that helps them, save for their future in retirement.
And where do you see the Trump administration? It seemed like during the campaign he was very favorable to Bitcoin. How do you think his administration will handle the digital currency asset?
Yeah, and so each day it seems like there's something very positive that he's doing that's going to help cryptocurrencies flourish and grow and help people, from decentralized finance to smoothing out the payment rails. See, the traditional finance system in banks, since Bitcoin's existence, have really been trying to restrict its growth. And they've done that by trying not to let wires go from traditional banks to crypto trading platforms. And I think as soon as he gets in, and he's got David Sachs who's coming in, who's going to look over AI and crypto, we're going to see that stuff just get moved to the side and really allow the crypto space to flourish and for people to invest in it the right and safe way.
Well, Brian, thanks so much for coming on and giving us some tips as well as some analysis as well. It's a really exciting time. We are seeing it just, it's so fun looking at it every day. Oh, look at it, going up, going up. But Brian, thanks so much for joining us here on Live Now from Fox. We really appreciate it.
Got it. Thanks.
Take care.